guys, I'm Hendo, and today I'm making the potion of water breathing based on the potion from Dungeons & Dragons. This is supposed to be a cloudy green potion with a little jellyfish bubble in it, and it lets you breathe underwater for up to an hour. I'm not gonna give it a jellyfish bubble because that's pretty extra, but I am gonna give it bubbles that light up. So let's get started. First, I looked up how to tie a fishnet, and it's actually pretty easy to do. There's like this ultra legit way that involves using something called a shuttle and gauge, and if you do it that way, you don't have to cut a bunch of different size string and you don't have to measure anything. But it looks way more complicated, and I honestly just don't have those things. So I'm gonna do it the simple -1 to intelligence way. You can start with just one string straight across. I've taped mine down to make things a little bit easier. Then I'm doing a cow hitch knot. I had no idea it was called that until I took an embarrassingly long amount of time on Google trying to figure it out. Most of you probably already know how to do this knot, but if you're like me, you just didn't know what it was called. I'm cutting about 8 strings that are 3 feet long. Then I'm folding it in half and doing that cow hitch knot, and just doing that 7 more times. Once you have a nice row of these, you can go to tying the next row of knots. For this next step, you're going to take the right side of one string and the left side of the neighboring string and just tie them together. Do this all the way across, and don't worry about the 2 outer strings. They're going to get tied in the next row. And then you guessed it, we're going to do the same thing for the next row. And you basically keep repeating this process until you have a whole net. Now I'm going to see about wrapping this around my potion bottle. I was initially going for like an asymmetric wrap type of thing, but it just didn't fit as snugly as I wanted and kind of ended up looking a little bit messy. So I actually decided to make a new net, especially since tying the first one really wasn't that bad. And I figured it would fit more perfectly if I tied it around the bottle itself. So instead of using a straight line to start, I'm actually going to start with a loop. And I've cow hitched about 10 knots onto it, each one again about 3 or 4 feet long before folding it in half. Now when I tie these strings together, they'll lay exactly where I want them to. I don't want the net to go all the way up the bottle because I still want to be able to see the fluid. So instead, I'm only making a net up to about half of it, and then just tying off the strings at the top around the neck of the bottle. I've also secured this string with a little bit of tape, and I think that looks pretty good. Now we're gonna move on to the seaweed. I just want a little bit of seaweed to cover the bottle's neck, which will also hide all of that tape. I'm using old Worbla scraps because I really need to get rid of them. Worbla is so expensive, I just can't bring myself to throw it away, but I have boxes of scraps that I don't need. So first I'm gonna measure out the length of the neck. And I want the Worbla to be all wavy and crinkly the way that seaweed is. I tried to sort of pinch the Worbla around to make it look like that, but then I decided it might be a little bit easier to just get a bunch of different size pens and markers and lay the heated Worbla on top of it, and that would create a nice little wave. And I did the same thing for the little dangly bits of the seaweed. It took a little bit of heat shaping in order to get it to flow the way that I wanted, but a nice little process of heating, holding, and cooling should get it exactly how you like. And now I'm gonna paint my seaweed. First, I'm just taping off the bottle. I'm using a trash bag so I don't waste too much tape. I'm pretty much just gonna wing the color here. I'm starting off with a green base, and I'm gonna use a slightly bluer, darker green for the shadows, and a slightly yellower, brighter green for the highlights. You could also totally do this seaweed part with ribbon or craft foam. Again, I'm just trying to get rid of Worbla. Take it from me, please. And then I'm just carefully peeling off that tape. I also found this really cool mossy cord, and I want to add that on top of the seaweed for a little bit of extra binding, and also just because it's really cute and I want to use it. Just hot glue is sturdy enough for this job. Next up is the lights. I got this really cool corked Fairlight string from Michaels, but I've also seen it in other craft stores and even Daiso. If you are familiar with Daiso, it's basically like a dollar store that's Japanese based, and every once in a while they have really good finds like that. The cork is a little bit too narrow for my bottle, but I'm gonna build that out later. Right now, I wanna spice up these lights by turning them into bubbles. The potion of water breathing technically has a jellyfish bubble, but I think that doing a bunch of little regular bubbles is just as good, easier, and still on theme. So I'm gonna accomplish this by just using hot glue. The lights are already sealed, so this shouldn't damage them at all. I thought that wax paper would be a good idea, but that actually did not work at all, and I probably should have guessed that. So if you're doing this at home, use a silicone mat instead. The wax did stick, and it's really taken me a while to get it off. But once I did, I'm gonna flip it over, and I'm gonna put more hot glue on that flat side so that the bubbles are a little bit rounder. And I'm making sure that they still fit into the bottle. The hot glue is a pretty waxy texture, so it does get a little bit stuck on the side of the bottle, but that's mostly a matter of friction and not really anything tacky. So it works out just fine. It was about then that I realized I have a silicone mold of a bunch of half domes. I don't really mind my bubbles the way that they are now, but I'd be psyched if they were a little bit more tidy and uniform. So I'm gonna go ahead and shove these lights into my mold and add more hot glue. And to do the other side, I'm actually gonna fill the mold first with hot glue and then press the other side on top. Then I'm just taking scissors and cleaning them up. This looks way cooler! If I could do it again, I'd probably make some of the bubbles different sizes, but I wasn't thinking about it at the time, and this looks pretty good too. Next, I'm gonna thicken the cork. First I tried corkboard, but the kind I have is pretty crumbly and it didn't roll very well. So instead I'm gonna use craft foam. I'm just gonna roll the foam around the cork with super glue until it's thick enough to seal the bottle. And I'm quickly sanding down the top, bottom, and back seam. Then I'm making the top flush by covering it in foam too. I'm just gluing the top onto a piece of foam and then I'm cutting out the top shape. I feel like this is a little bit easier than trying to line it up. And then I'm sanding down the excess. I'm gonna seal this foam with Hex Flex. Normally I'd use Plastidip, but I don't have any right now and this thing is so small I just want to be done. So glue it is. And I'm just painting my cork with brown acrylic paint. Nothing too fancy here. Just using my typical 3 shades to do this. Since a lot of my other potions are cork, I'm actually just gonna make this look like wood. Bam, ready. Now I'm gonna add my potion fluid. This is the best part. I found this bubbly blue soap and I'm gonna use that first. Then I'm gonna add this minty green body wash. It actually didn't end up being as opaque as I wanted because the bottle is a little bit green. So I'm just gonna add some green dye to this fluid and then pour that in there. I love this little ombre effect. So I felt like this bottle was still missing a little something, so I'm gonna add this fake moss stuff. To start, I'm just using normal glue and adding on some moss. Then as it builds out, I'm gonna switch over to hot glue. Sorry that I'm missing a little chunk of that. I thought I was recording, but I wasn't. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. That was just the thing it was missing. And the last little detail to add is a tag. I'm gonna go with this little brown label and just slap Potion of Water Breathing on there. Ah, it's perfect. Here it is, all finished. That's it for my Potion of Water Breathing. If you want to check out a drinkable cocktail version, I have that video on my channel too. Next month I'll be making the Potion of Vitality. But if you have any ideas for other potions to make, let me know down in the comments. Thanks so much for joining my party and making this potion with me. Until next time, I'm Hendo. Thanks for crafting with me.